Okay, it's pretty simple. I'm gonna ask you some questions, and then we're gonna sort of have a conversation about the quote unquote deeper meaning of the questions.
Okay.
So the first question is, what is your name?
What
First
is what?
question is, what is your name?
My name is Kwesi Abbensetts.
Tell me about yourself.
I'm an artist. I'm a cowboy. A maker of things. And that's how I live. Yeah.
A cowboy. Elaborate more on the cowboy aspect.
It's just more like living life through sort of a bohemian way. Um, just sort of having a free spirit about it. And in terms of my art, just kind of like just going for whatever I feel and just creating that way. So it's sort of like a no limit type of outlook, no
Where could
boundaries.
where could someone see more of your art if they wanted to check it out?
If they want to see more of my art, they can go online. My website is abbensetts.com. So it's www.abbensetts, ABBENSETTS.com. Or Instagram, Spaceship George, or under my name, hashtag Kwesi Abbensetts. You can find
Where
it.
does George come from? What was the inspiration for that?
Well, it's sort of still following that cowboy theme, so it's just really relating to, well, it's a name that automatically someone is going to be like, well, where did you get that name from? Like you just asked me. And then at the same time, it's like it sticks in your brain. And then at the same time, it's a little out of the world. You want to put it that way. So it kind of creates its own energy. And my first name is George. So in terms of my expression, my art, I would kind of relate to it in sort of like a outer world experience because it's
Okay,
more of going away and going in my head and just kind of churning out stuff. So
I know your first name was George. Okay. So the first
yeah,
question is: you're walking through the forest. Is it daytime or nighttime?
I'm walking through the park,
The
daytime or
forest.
nighttime, forest. Oh, daytime.
You come to an animal that's stuck in a trap. What type of animal is it?
Um, the type of animal would be a chicken, a
A
wild chicken.
chicken. A wild chicken. Okay. Do you stop and help it, or do you keep going?
I'll free it. I'll help it. I'll help that chicken.
You come to an object. It could be anything in the universe you want it to be. What is it?
It's a rare metal. It's a
What
rare
type of
piece of
metal?
metal, possibly gold. Yes.
Okay. You come to a cup. It can be made out of any type of material. What type of material is it made out of?
A cub?
A cup.
Oh, a
Like
cup.
a cup to drink out of.
Um, yeah. It would be glazed, um, handmade cup.
Okay. What's inside of it?
Water, rainwater.
Rainwater. Okay. Is it half empty or half full?
It's about half empty.
Half empty. You come to a body of water. It can be any type of body of water you want it to be. What type of body of water is it?
It's a running river
Running river. How do you get past
coming
it?
down from the mountains. I step across the rocks, so it's not that deep.
Okay. Um, you come to a wall. How many feet tall is the wall?
I come to a wall. How do I get across the wall?
How many feet tall
Get
is
over
it?
the wall. Oh, how many feet? Yeah, there's a audio. How many feet tall? It's about 6 feet, my height.
You're 6 feet tall.
Yeah, well, I'm 6'4", so
Oh, damn. Is it hard to get over or easy to get over?
it's hard to get over because there's nothing to put my foot on, so I have to sort of improvise.
I hear you. I hear you.
And yeah, because there's no, it's a concrete wall, so it.
Once you get, I'm sorry, cut you off.
But I have to jump up. I have to jump up and trying to lift my body up on top of the edge and try to get my legs over.
Once you get past the wall, what do you see?
Oh, a big open field,
A big open field.
a wide,
Okay,
big open field for a good distance.
nice. So you said it was daytime, so there's something that you're afraid of. What are you afraid is in the dark?
Not afraid of the dark. It's more of the cold, cold air.
Cold air. Why cold air?
Because old cold air comes down at night. So usually woods, forests, they get cold.
That's usually something that happens like when you're close to water. Like, like here in LA, it gets
No,
really water.
no, you should try it. Well, you should try it out. Go. Well, LA, I don't know if I guess I'm dealing with sort of a New York vibe. So it's usually when the sun sets and the park you're in the park. Not in the height of summer, but like the park is generally cooler than the. So I'm a West Indian guy, so in a way, when it gets cooler, I just want to get warm.
No, I feel
So.
you. I feel you. You said the animal was a chicken, a wild chicken. So the animal connects to how you see people. How would you connect a wild chicken to how you see people?
Whoa, how would I connect a wild chicken to how I see people? Um, that one, I can't figure out how to make that analogy or that relation. Um, Wild chickens are private. Um, they don't like to be found in a particular way. Um, so people are private in their own way. Um, they're protective of their space. Um, and they're free, so everyone wants to be free in a particular aspect, in a way, because they're not bound by the pen. um, so yeah, I never really
Well,
gave it. Yeah, I never really thought about what a wild chicken personality, really, but that's a good one to really dwell on, also.
well, that's an interesting animal. Period. I mean, I never even realized that. Well, obviously they're wild chickens, but it's not to say a
Yeah,
wild. That's obviously you have some experience
I
with
guess
wild chickens.
I'm relating it to the Caribbean experience too, because in the jungles or in the woods, in those particular areas, you would encounter wild chickens that are just there, um, and I don't think you find eggs from them, and they're just roaming around. Yeah.
Do people eat them or hunt them or whatever?
No, not that I have heard much of, but if they happen to catch them, then yeah, they will eat them.
But it's
Um,
not like something.
but in
That's
terms
interesting.
of But in terms of just hygiene and so forth, because they don't know necessarily what they're eating and so forth, so it's better to just have the domesticated ones. But beyond that, they're wild chickens running around. So,
Well, that's just interesting. That you have a chicken that's just sort of. I mean, I guess it's
I was like a
like
wild bird, but it can't. Yeah, because it can't fly. It just runs around.
I don't know how well wild chickens would survive, like in the South or whatever. Like,
Oh, you never know. You
I don't
never
know
know.
where I
You're
came.
from the south?
Yeah, I'm from Georgia, so they
Oh,
wouldn't. Nah, but I was. But I mean, I guess looking at, I mean, being a photographer and being an artist, that while you're talking about people being private, it's not like you're trying to invade someone's privacy, but you're trying to sort of reveal, sort of, even doing something like this is sort of the motivation of sort of reveal sort of the inner aspects of someone. Like when you were talking about how
yeah,
wild
fair
chickens,
enough.
and that a lot of
Yeah.
your interactions on some level are on that level of, you know,
Well, I
uh,
guess I mean, guess my personality, I guess I could put it down as sort of a wild chicken-esque type of thing because I go after varied experiences in terms of my art. I don't really place limitations on how and what I choose to like put my eye on or focus on. So in a way, but then I'm still private. I'm sort of a private person. Most of it is revealed through my work. Most of myself, I should say, is revealed through the expression of my work. Um, so in that space, I could say wild chicken, cowboy. I think they kind of have a similar quality to each other. So so I try to be a little, not try, but it's more of along the lines of just always seeking out new inspiration, trying out things, moving on to the next. So I'm not afraid to sort of break, not break, but sort of depart from things that I do at times. You know, they may be attachment, but at the same time, it's like, okay, well, let me try this other thing. So because even as I'm a photographer, but well, I'm known as a photographer, but overall, I'm an artist. So it's like you can, you're you're placed within a particular space or box because of how you establish yourself, and so it's trying to break out of all those little spaces or trying to share the vision that I'm much broader than that, um, but at the same time respecting the foundation, which is photography. And so, within all of those little roads and directions and experiences, I guess somehow it makes me. So.
this is more. You talk a lot about freedom and then just artistry. How have you found the balance between, creating the keeping your freedom as far as your artistic expression and sort of the financial aspects of, just survival? What has been the balance for you?
Oh well, yeah. Well, you never. I guess you could say a state of equilibrium. It's still a managing process, but at the same time, it's never. I'm always a person that's very. I manage my life in a way where it's like I don't over exceed certain situations or finances or just don't not to overextend myself. So, and I'm creative enough to also create a very rich life. So it doesn't it on one level you want to create an establishment, a foundation that can support the future and support building and growing with family and home and all of those things. Um, and that's genuinely a thing that we all have to do in this world, in this life. So no one escapes it. Um, for me, I've always managed and I've always balanced myself, and I've always never held the outlook of like, some people think like, artists are like poor or whatever. And I've never really been that kind of outlook. It's always been about there's lots of abundance, in terms of just how I've created my life. As I said, I've found the means, ways of being smart at at how I live my life. And so, let's say aspirationally on a economic scale, or like say, it's like yes, to sell my work, to have my work being sold, to have my work being collected, to have my work being in places of well-known reputations, meaning like museums, galleries, um, but at the same time, it doesn't take me off of it doesn't take me away from the direction, which is primarily just to make work, make art that reflect my culture and myself, and that in itself is enriching and very um, redemptive to me. So I don't really, when you're making life, let's say in domestic situations, you're with wife and you're making home, that's genuinely a concern. How do you survive? How do you make it forward? How do you articulate things that create that type of sustenance? Um, However, as an artist, I can't let that cripple me. So I have to keep making, and you just keep doing, and see what happens. You know. But I think also we live in a world that's such capitalistically tailored that and then when you realize that also it's a very interesting kind of transportation sort of reality that sometimes I go through, where I'm here, I'm living in the United States, but then when I go home, not go home, when I go to the Caribbean and visit and so forth, um, it's a different reality of how people look at life, because in this world here, it's very image based. There's a level of superficiality that departs from a certain type of real reality, because there are lots of comforts, there are lots of conveniences, and so forth. So, like I always say, like when you're rich, when you become rich, it's cool because now you can really focus and spend time in doing yoga and all of those type of things. When you're in a poor state, you can't, your brain doesn't really can't afford to do that. It's more based on survival. Um, so there are those things that I look at, but overall, um, I just take it one day at a time. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that's
I know I
most
spoke a
definitely.
long, that was a long answer, but
No, it was a great answer. It was just making me think it's that in America, a lot of times the judgment of things becomes the monetary judgment. Just anything, like you said, we all go through that, and that ultimately isn't the value of anything. So, like it's
mhm.
sort of like we all have to sort of break away from is uh, not just money, but it's defining our success value and the value of the things we do, whatever it is, being a mother, being an
Yeah,
artist, being whatever, based on some greater standard or, you know, than just money or just like you said, the PR or image of something. So,
yeah.
I
Well,
think,
but everything is here. Everything over here. I mean, if you, they say first world, but it's within the first world aesthetics, within the first world operations, and so forth. That's why when people go into like the Africas or the Caribbean and they deal with customer service, they don't understand why is it taking so long, and it's like, but that's the rhythm of that space, and we have a particular rhythm here, so a lot of times you have to adjust and recalibrate, like, okay, all right, because it's still gonna happen, but it will happen in a different time sequence. But
I got
you know, Yeah. Um, but overall, I mean, the main thing is, to make art and to just share it with the world. So that's, I'm not going to call it a purpose, because I think purpose is a thing that shifts and changes over time based on your experiences, your interests, or not having interests, so it's not really there's something that leads you in certain directions. Maybe there's like a compass that says, this is probably the road you kind of go along, but overall it's still like at times you may like want to jump off. I mean, you want to climb Mount Everest suddenly out of the blue, so, um,
Yeah. I know.
yeah.
So the history of especially like artists in New York or black artists in New York, it's always like like I was talking to uh who I was just really commenting when like like it was Jamel Shabazz, and
Yeah.
he was saying something about documenting a certain period in time, and I was like, I mean, he has document, he continues to work, but just really he
Yeah.
documented you just like a very specific period in time, and like I think about like James Van Der Zee and people like that, like during the Harlem Renaissance of did James
Hmm.
Van Der Zee think at that moment like did he think about his sort of place in history? You know what I mean? It's sort of like, or even someone like Basquiat, like, or were they really thinking about, like, okay, you're an artist and you create things and you do it for the love of it, but, are you thinking that, hey, maybe 100 years or 30 years or 50 years from now, this is going to be a defining piece of work that defines a place and time for people who weren't in that time? Like, is that
Um,
what do you ever think about that? Like, as far as like the things you create of like, it's very defining of a very
um,
specific or this time or whatever.
I mean, I don't. Okay, so I do think about it from a perspective of, okay, let's put it this way. Instagram, I post every day. I post stuff, and I put a hashtag on it, which is my name. So in a way, I'm acting on a sort of futuristic notion, which is someone is going to find this hashtag at some point, if Instagram continues to exist in 20 years from now. But more than likely, we'll still be able to have access to these things. Um, Really and truly, is wanting to make an impact, yes, because my whole mantra from the very beginning is that I wanted to reflect Black people. I wanted to reflect my culture back at, because it wasn't so much of a like, I'm like on this political angle. It was just more like, I love my people. I love how beautiful we are. I love our skin. I love what we give off as a culture, um, and the vibrancy of that. So for me, it starts from there, and then at the same time, wanting to also reflect more Black women, because there's an absence of that in the space. In terms of just like, when I say the space, I mean the proliferation of images that reflecting people, which is in terms of Black people and brown people. It's not something that within the media. It's sort of, let's create more and more and more and more. So in reality, we the fellow cultural members have to do, Black people, we have to do the work, and we have to create our own ways of getting it out and showing it to the world. So for me, my work started to sort of from a space of beauty, um, and then love, and then sort of celebration and dignity and self-preservation of our beautiful natures. So, and then so so after a time of doing this now, you generally, yes, you start to contemplate, oh, how does this factor into the future? How does this become a thing if I'm continually doing it and building on it and building on it and building on it? But that's also the magic of um, focus, I should say. I'll use the word basic focus, but what I mean focus is like that's the magic of when you build something that eventually it becomes a body, it becomes alive, and once you keep nurturing it, it grows branches, it grows leaves, it grows fruits, and so just to come back to Jamel Shabazz and his is in relation to his work, that's what happened. I don't think he really started out first to say like this is what I'm gonna do. He's like, I got a camera. I'm gonna go take these pictures of these people that I experience every day, and then at the same time, it's love of culture because as you see, how he reflects the culture back at you. It's like, oh my gosh, he's just loving everything he's seeing. So you know, it's so we're doing the work of sort of, you could say, an African griot in a way of just sort of like, you're instead of telling stories, you're just capturing an image that now is going to tell a story over time and sort of create a preservation of what we've built, what we've gone through, what we are now. So these soothsayers or these gurus or these, of the culture, or you know, they're there by divine order. Because in a manner of speaking, it's still and I think no matter what, throughout the future, we'll always have new people coming along doing the work to create the work. And so for me, it's genuinely, yes, I want to be able to have an influence on the future, which is younger people, younger generations coming up and seeing the work and being inspired to go make work. Not, I'm not saying you got to come after me. I mean, celebrate me. It's just more like I'm putting out
Inspired.
something that will stimulate someone's brain or spark something when they see it, because that's just really how it works, you know. And especially if you get to see more of yourself reference in the world, then there's a sense of validity, there's a sense of grounding, there's a sense of I belong here, and I'm not just a missing person in the mix of all of this. So I'm just adding to that whole like line of black creators, image makers, musicians, um, scientists that will try to leave their mark and sort of leave something that someone can look at and be like, oh, wow, you know, and then see how they can move on if they're an artist, how they can challenge the next stage of things. So it's just like leaving food on the trail.
I got you. I got you. It's like you think about there's so like photography is it isn't really that old. Painting is relatively it's very old as far as but when you look at this sort of like when you were talking about the African griot or how history will be remembered, like the hieroglyphic
Hieroglyphics.
hieroglyphics in Egypt or like on the pyramids and stuff like that of and this sounds
Yeah.
corny, but in some way Instagram or these new technologies will sort of be the same thing. Like, you don't think like they're gonna be around 1,000 years from now, but it probably will be, or some, all the things we're sort of
Yeah.
doing now. And people will sort of travel back looking at our times
Yeah.
and will look for the Abbott sets. You know what I'm saying? It's like so I just find that interesting of just,
Yeah, because yeah, because we what was I? We are, we're just creating. I mean, literally, we're just humans here. We're creating as we go along. We make up our reality. Um, we deal in states of oppositions, but we still try to move through move through and maintain. So, because like like emojis, because you were saying hieroglyphics. Like to me, emojis are like hieroglyphics because it's just. And then you have a younger generation now. They just shorten words. They just turn them into like letters and stuff like that. And you're like, what is this? What is this? Every 6 months, you gotta ask like,
Yeah.
what is this new thing? And that again, that goes to show you like the human need for like creating new things to excite, to entertain, to sort of, I don't know, to just do it. And going into the future again, like let's say Instagram is not there. How do people find the stuff now? Let's say if everything is in tatters. I don't know. It's a weird thing. Someone, by virtue of technology, someone can probably like, I don't know, tap into a memory bank, and suddenly there are all these images that just pop up, and so we don't know how this goes down into the future, but somehow it always remains. That's what
Yeah.
I kind of, when I look at history, as much as people try to eradicate stuff and get rid of, burn the books and remove this and remove that, it still remains. So, um, but we'll see how the future looks, because right now it's looking like they're just gonna put us in a pen and monitor us technologically, and have us have all of our salaries being used up through subscriptions. And I'm going off tangent, but I'm like,
I understand what you're saying.
and
So
then
you
as for
said that.
technology, as for go ahead.
I'm
And,
sorry. Go
and
ahead.
as for tech, sorry, let me jump in 1 second. And as for like technology, art, this type of stuff with AI, it's an interesting transition because it will test. I think it will test our humanness in a particular way because of what we would like as real stimulus. Because really, AI is an artificial stimulus that's mimicking a real thing, us. And so are the new generations going to succumb to it, where they're going to like depend on this thing and think of it as real and human like, because, or do we really want sort of a state where our nature is like very tangible, where I can see you and hug you, and and have a laugh in the room and that type of stuff. It'll be interesting, the future.
I think I'm I'm honestly surprised that AI hasn't had more of an effect. Like the things you can create, I feel like people you could create anything, but it isn't really that intelligent. It's really just sort of taking, like if I say, create a Nike ad inspired that Kwesi Abbensetts shot. It can do its own little mutated version of that Nike ad, but it doesn't really have any imagination of its own. So you can create
No.
these, amazing things like for cheap, but people don't really seem to admire it or respect it as much as I thought they would. You know what I mean? Like you'll post
Well, it
something that's
doesn't. It doesn't. Because it's still a repeater. So it's, I guess, the best analogy I could say, when if you relate to art, to becoming an artist, when they tell you, if you want to become an artist, like you just go ahead, copy, 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 copy until you become your own style. You become you. So it's like the copying is learning, but AI, on the other hand, it's not really a copy. More of a, I mean, sorry, it's more of a copying situation versus an intuitive sort of output. It doesn't. It's not like it's going in and it's trying a sort of an intuitive thing, which is like, let's just create the style, but it doesn't have a touch that's human. That's That's where all of these things go wrong. Because even if you look at like the images that it will create, if you look at the eyes, there's no real life. But if you look at the eyes of a real photograph of a person, you have a connection. So that's even why when you can look at a photograph with a human being, you feel something differently. Versus AI, it feels a little bit weird in the system. But I don't know if you've ever had that experience.
No, like I've experimented with it, and it's basically what you said. It's like it doesn't. I would like it to be more advanced. You know what I'm saying? So like it doesn't have the ability to really create something that hasn't been created before. You know what I'm saying? It's sort of like you have this imagination
Yeah.
if it broadening your ability to create, but it really doesn't do that. It doesn't really. I mean, just maybe the scale of things, but it just doesn't really have that ability
Yeah.
and that sort of the eye thing, or just like the humanity
Yeah.
image. And when we were talking
Yeah.
about earlier, just
Yeah.
about with women, it's like it doesn't really have an ability to create a woman outside of just sort of like this sort of digitized sort of
Archetype.
yeah, archetypes. Exactly, that's a perfect word. It's an archetype. It's all the same woman, very
Yeah.
like the AI model. She's really I forgot her name. This guy created her, and she's really dark skinned. She's really dark skinned, and you look at her and you think, and I was actually there was a black woman who was sort of like, I'm going to create my own one. And when you look at it, you sort of like it's sort of admirable because it's like, wow, she's beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful what he created. But then this
Mhm.
black woman created her own thing, and it just made me realize that she's just a dark skinned version of an archetype. You know what I'm saying? It's like when I saw the black woman's version of her creation, it was just like, that's a black woman. You know what I mean? But it's sort
Yeah.
of like, I was like,
It
oh,
doesn't
that's
reflect
crazy.
that.
Like,
But I would say that's partly as a result also of AI being designed by more of a white force.
exactly.
So what I mean by that is sort of like it's like a situation. I'll put it this: the best experiment you can do with that type of situation is you give you let's say you have a lab and you have a bunch of white AI makers and you have a bunch of black AI makers and see what happens. Because really and truly, what AI is a personality. So ChatGPT is its own particular personality. Gemini is its own particular, and it's designed by these group of engineers, and then these group of engineers over here. So really and truly, they may do the same thing, but their values and their ethics and their outlook and their idea of like images and so forth come from the sources who they are exactly. So it's so as much as it's supposedly this know all, it still has a sort of an individual personality built, if that makes sense. Because it's not you and I. If you were to design a AI, it would be particularly of you in a particular way. It will still do all the things as I said, but it will reflect you on a larger scale, culturally, everything. But like, but we are the ones that are actually really designing about inputting and all that type of stuff. But as I said, the foundation, the DNA, is by these particular sources. So it's never really a neutral thing.
And it's very myopic, like you said, because it's the people who are creating it have their own perspective. And yeah, so,
Yeah.
but that's it.
But but the way things are just given to us in this particular current future, it it may seem like all these things are public good, but it's really private companies. So it's like you're in a catch-22 situation.
Yeah, it's or even like access, like the whole Sora thing. Like it's not a lot of people who actually have access to it, and it's laying the foundation for its
Yeah,
mentality or
yeah. But we'll see how it affects
imagination.
art because because right now I'm going through this phase like art is dead. Like when like when Nas was saying rap is dead, hip hop is dead. It's like right now we're going through this schism of like, or I should say, we're dealing with a situation where corporate entities are incorporating these things into their lives. So by virtue of all of that, it gets trickled down to us, and we'll see how that sort of like how we take it on. So and but then as far as art goes, like television, when movies being made, and shows and movies can now be made by like largely by AI. So it begs the future of how do we look at art? How will we respect it? How will we value it? You know, so it's a lot of breaking down of of walls that were not walls, but more breaking down of traditions.
Yeah, I was gonna say well, you were saying that the object was a precious metal, gold. The object
Yeah.
is so relating that is what you want most in the world. How would you relate this precious metal or gold to what you want most in the world?
Um, it's a precious metal. I gotta respect it. Gotta make it beautiful. Gonna give me some money. Um, but at the same time, respect it as a gift. Um, because I'm walking along this path and it's suddenly so in some spiritual way, it's a sign of abundance. Um, and I'll use it well.
Beautiful. You said the cup was made out of what was it? Handcrafted. I think that's
Glazed,
the way you glazed. So
handcrafted,
this
glazed clay, I guess. Well, it's all clay.
handcrafted glaze. So I guess relating that to it's sort of your level of materialism. It isn't really even with the gold. It's sort of like you even said the thing about with money, but it was more about the and the glaze is something that you created, and the value I guess you see in things is the artistry of it, and not even just the artistry of it, but also the personal creation. Like you could have just said, even if you said a gold cup or if you said a glaze, or a copper or clay cup, but it was more so that this is a cup that you that was created. You know what I mean? It was
Mhm.
it's a piece of art itself
Yeah.
if you
Well, for
create the
me
cup
as an
like that.
artist, I have a reverence for people when they, well, not people, I should say, I have a reverence for the idea when people make stuff and use their hands, because my idea of the hand is sort of like a magic wand. Because literally we create everything. We put it in our brain, but literally you got to use your hands to finish the rest of the thing. So the hand is sort of on a level as the artist. It's the magic wand. So when people make things, um, I relate to it in the sense of the effort that they put in, the creativity, the the love. Um, so it's an object. So the cup would be an object that was sort of ushered into the world, given love, birthed by whoever the person that made it. And so I have a lot of respect for that process. because now what happens is I start to treasure this thing. I start to treasure this cup and reflect on it as a deeper experience than merely that it's just a cup. And and the fact that I found it in the forest and it's beautiful and I don't know who made it, it even makes it even more special. It makes it a very valuable item, just as much as the gold. But I know the gold can give me a lot more money. So
Hey, I ain't hating. I'm appreciating. You said it was filled with water, so you're uh the
I won't
you
drink
just feel it
water.
with sort of you don't drink water. You
No,
said
I
you
said
don't
I
drink
won't be
water,
drinking that water.
or you said it was spring water. So even more so, just sort of the organic nature of it. But you're more concerned with just the basic fundamentals in life, but also again, like with the wild chicken, it's the spring water. It's something that sort of came from nature or it's organic. And some, I mean, I guess water comes from
Yeah.
someplace, but spring water is just something that's actually being created or is from the source of some
Mhm.
you know just organic, just from nature.
Yeah.
So it sort of
I mean,
relates,
that's my nature too. I'm more of a earthbound person.
right, yeah. But then you said it was half empty. So do you consider yourself more of a pessimistic than optimistic person?
I no, I wouldn't. I'm a little bit of both. I'm more of an optimist, but no, yeah, I'm a positive. I'm an optimist. However, there's hints. I mean, everyone has hints of, of sort of being a negative, having negative thoughts and so forth. But I think my outlook on life is mostly positive. Yeah, pessimism. I guess it's you have thoughts when you're dealing with stuff, and but overall, I don't really get um, too wired up or too. I just kind of relate. Get back. I get quiet, I should say, and go through what I have to go through. Um, so but I mean, I've had people say, some things I can say might sound negative or what, an outlook, I should say, that's negative. Um, However, it's not to the point where it's like I just beat myself up about it. It's just more like it's more about wanting to get over it and get ahead of it and take care of it. And so versus sort of letting it cripple me or letting it sort of stop me from what I'm doing.
I got you. You said the body of water was a flowing river. So
Hmm.
the body of water still connects to your level of passion, love. I guess a flowing river is still the same thing. It's sort of an ongoing thing of just it isn't like even like an ocean is massive. I guess it has parameters or even like a lake or something like that. But a river is something that sort of doesn't. It just keeps going. It just feeds into something else.
Yes.
So how would you connect that
Well,
to?
resilience. Again, freedom because it's sort of it just roams, it runs. Play, a sense of play. Um, it's it's also like a whimsical sort of feeling. It kind of reflects a sort of perfect state in harmony with nature. Um, and at the same time, sustenance because it can provide you with drinking water. Um, and the likelihood is coming down from some mountain, so that water is clean. Um, and just the idea of being outdoors and in the sun. So
You said, but then you said that you walk on the pebbles in the water. It's
the rocks.
the rocks in the water of that can be interpreted a lot of different ways. It's sort of like you're in this ongoing flowing thing, but you haven't really immersed yourself completely in it, or how would you connect that?
Okay.
You're in it,
Uh,
but you're like
um, no, I guess because I don't know how to swim. So, but I mean, it's not. I don't think there's any fear there. It's just more of a. I'm connected to the water, but I'm not so as a person. I'm not so connected to it in terms of just like being in it all the time.
I
I'm
got you.
more of like I'll jump in, quick moment, come out, dry off, maybe come back. Where some people can be in it all the time. Whereas for me, it's more along the lines of I'll experience it and then you know enjoy it and reflect on it, and But that's the extent I think. Yeah.
I got you. You said the wall was 6 feet tall,
Hmm.
so as you're 6'4", so you're still taller than the wall, but I guess it's basically almost eye level. So the wall sort of measures how many trials and tribulations you had in your life. So relatively, I mean, it's eye level, but it's an extremely tall. Or do you feel like you've had a lot of trials and tribulations in your life?
I mean, again, that's related to outlook on life. No, I think I've had a good life, okay life. Um, but some of the experiences, someone else might be like, "Oh, that was crazier." But for me, it's like I guess my outlook is that in the midst of whatever I've experienced or however I've lived, I've found a way to make it to elevate the level of that space through my art, through my creativity. So in many ways, my creativity or my adjustments and attitude to life has made me look at it as like, oh, this life is cool, you know.
Yeah.
But I can say I've grown up in Guyana and we didn't have running water and all that type of stuff. But it's like that didn't impact on my experience as like less than. It just was like that's what it was. So it doesn't impact on my experience to say like I suffered or whatever. No, it's like we managed and we created and we survived and we pushed through. So maybe if I had a situation that was more dire and poor or some sort of that type of experience, I may have related to life differently. But meaning like we managed, so we got by. My mom got by. I've managed to get by. So it's related to how you create the experience a lot of times. So even though there can be obstacles, in this case, like the wall, I think the wall is more related to the the notion of me trying to get my work into the world, and then at the same time turn that into a real business, a proper business, art making art on the art business. So I guess you could say that would be the block, and I can see over it, so I know what's over there. In a way, it's not that the grass is greener, but it's a big field of grass or a big, and and so I guess it's just to understand the wall and to just get by it, get over it, and get to an open field.
You know, you basically answered the question I was going to ask you next because I was thinking of just sort of like your own personal journey, but just like an artistic expression and relating that to the trials and tribulations. But you basically explained that pretty simple. You said you found the wall hard to overcome. Have you found that hard to overcome? Just sort of like the trials and tribulations uh, artistry, or just on that aspect, or
No,
just
it's not
period.
that I found it hard. I haven't found it. It's just more I want. A lot of times I want to play by my rules in a way, um, and also
Yeah,
not because I'm not. I'm not like a. I'm not a an academic artist, um, and and then at the same time, I want my art to be interpreted freely because I'm not. I don't. I don't. I don't. My art is not really buried in the idea of. No, I shouldn't say the idea. The making of my art, subject matter, and ideas aren't really built on ideology in a particular way. It's built on my feelings, my intuition, my emotions, my random inspiration, my cultural values. So I could probably put that into an intellectual vein, um, but at the same time, I don't want to put it out in such a way where it's boxed into a particular just one thing. And so I guess you could say my hurdle or my getting over a lot of times is not is because I don't want to deal with that type of stuff because it bores me in a particular way. Um, um, but I understand how it is, what the meaning of it in this world, because one, it's on the upper level of scales, meaning like as a artist who may, if you're an artist who's with the big galleries or whatever, they want pedigree behind the work. So when you have, because the valuation is created through all of those means, and you go to a particular school, and so that's another type of accreditation to the work, and so that's the part. But for me, that's also the fun part. For me is to like just do what I want to do it how I do it, and within the within the realm of serving ego, I still get the respect of the artists that are doing good work too. I mean, within the academic vein. So, um, because my work, as I said, is like based on the idea of beauty. It's the idea of just reflecting back culture, and so. But I just get a little. Mm, I get a little. I guess, yeah, bored when I deal with it in other ways, in terms of like just how the world is puts it out. Sort of like this. You have to go to this school and do this to get to be able to climb these um, ladders. So I guess it's the ladder to get over the fence, the wall.
No, I got you. I mean, personally, I feel like you most definitely have an ideology, but it's sort of like Zora Neale Hurston. It's sort of like when she came out, she was creating something new, and it wasn't really a historical context or historical foundation for it. This is just something she did, and it's just like, wow, well, it's not credible because it's like we can't connect it to something before this so much. But and she was just doing something new. But then if you look now to Toni Morrison and the Alice Walker, just a lot of people who've been so inspired by her work are and they are the
Yeah.
establishment of sort of, how we look at, well, that's literature, but,
Yeah.
Art in its own way too, is that, or even like I went to the American Film Institute and this Darren Aronofsky, he did Pie, he's Requiem for a Dream, he's done a lot of movies, but he got kicked out of the American Film Institute because they were like, this is an American Film Institute film. I mean, it's so like, this isn't what we do. And then later on, he had success, and then it's sort of like they come back and celebrate him, and now he's sort of, if you go to the American Film Institute, Darren Aronofsky, this is what we do. You know what I'm saying? So it's sort of like, when you walk that path, like how the future is going to look at you, like, so, or a lot of you, even someone like, we talked earlier about Basquiat or these people where it's just like a graffiti
I mean,
or stuff like
graffiti.
that.
Graffiti is. Graffiti. I have an interesting notion of graffiti, and graffiti is like related to the noise of the city. It relates to the noise that's inside of young people. And what I mean by noise, it's sort of like a existing in a sort of unguided space, not knowing. So you have expression that you want to get out. You have creativity that you want to get out, and the only best way you can kind of get it out is try through these scribbles, you know. And but eventually it turns into an art form, but it's really about like trying to get something out, and it's you know, and it turns out into and just because it's in the cities, it's sort of like it just gets so because it would be interesting if you were to take all the graffiti writing kids and you'd be like, all right guys, I'll put you into the graffiti writing camp and you can learn to get better and make art. You would be surprised how many kids would do that because they want some place to go and do something to get their creativity out. So it just comes out in this sort of rebellious way on the buildings and that type of stuff. But if they had spaces where they could go do this stuff, they would go. They would do it. But at the same time, I guess it's still thrilling to challenge the the um the powers that be. So and put up your resistance.
I feel like art has really become quote unquote credible or celebrated in a lot of areas until you can teach other people to do it. So it's like if you sort of come along and you sort of your inspiration. I mean, of course, you have. I'm sure there are artists or all these. There's a background, a foundation for your artistry, but it's something you're creating something that's based completely on your life experience and your perspective. It isn't like someone could just like teach someone to do what you're doing. You know what I mean? So it's sort of like until you come along, and I feel like a lot of times with artists, whatever it is that even like with hip hop now, it's like this whole thing of like decoding, and it's like, but it's being a rapper isn't really something you can sort of teach someone to be. It's just sort of like, it sort of comes from the environment, it comes from their background, their culture, and their experiences, and that any type of artistic expression that's really rooted in that isn't going to gain the credit. I hate to use credibility or the celebration until you can teach someone else to do it. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you can go to a school and just show them your work. Like, oh, here's his work. And now you can do this too. Or, here's a foundation for, here's a foundation for, the next artist or whatever. So that becomes the sort of
Well,
trial
yeah,
and
I mean, but
tribulation.
I guess that comes back to inspiration and then being inspired and then showing them technique and I think maybe also showing them how to do it is more along the lines of also like maybe even it's maybe like a scenario of like that person wants to do it, didn't know how to do it. I showed them how to do it, and then they're like, and then the light bulb opens up in their head, and that they can possibly do more of this, more and more and more. Um, but I think also, again, in this world, or also, art should be seen as something. I should say, having art should be seen as something very democratic and very enriching to the spirit and the soul. But the way it's being told to you or us, it's more along the lines of who is the big artist, how much this is selling for, or whatever, and you kind of and then so like the human being or the person is just thinking that if they were to get art, it has to be like this person or that person because they're such a big name and such a big name for them to really have art. And it's like, no, because so art is never really encouraged as something that is sort of self-sustaining to the spirit. So no one really cares about sort of having art in their home because they're not really given the vision to understand that art is much more than just who's the famous artist. It's more like a necessary thing that you need in your house and your home at times to just give you courage, give you light, give you a sense of belonging, give you a sense of happiness. So it does a lot of things just besides just say, oh, this is about this or that, because it doesn't work on you like once or twice. It works on you all the time because at times, one day you may pass it for 10 days, and then one day something about it based on what you've experienced in your life jumps out at you and feeds you something. So art is not really such an idle thing. It's a very active thing because coming back to when we were talking about AI and this the whole idea of things being made by human beings, if it doesn't have the spirit of the human, it's not going to give you anything. Because anything that we make by our hands has a spirit in it. It has something that makes you feel something. That's why even if you look at when you look at a painting, it could be a photorealistic painting of a picture that you may have seen, but still that painting does something to you that keeps you watching and looking at it and staring at it, and somehow you become absorbed into the presence of that painting, or it becomes absorbed into you, and you don't know why, but you just have this feeling, and the reason why I'll always come back to it is because a human hands did it. This came from a human being. But when it comes from a machine or within what we do now within AI, it doesn't have a sense of connection. It has a sense of like we can recognize it, we can see it, we know it, we can sort of it can, but there's a holistic sense that we receive from that thing, you know, because it's not coming out of a human nature. It's coming out of it's coming out of ones and zeros,
No, I
which
got you.
is the computer.
How do you
So
feel about your responsibility? Like, you're creating art in a space where there are a lot of artists, but is ultimately outside of your environment. There are not a lot of people who are authentically trying to represent the things that you create. You know what I'm saying? It's sort of like, like especially in the black community, it becomes a thing of a lot of times people from the outside sort of getting the opportunity or getting the chance to represent or just having the power, just like, to come into a space where they aren't really or weren't aren't a part of, and they end up sort of being the gatekeepers to how the outside world sees these things. So being someone who's in that space, there aren't really a lot of artists like that. So how do you feel about your responsibility in just your expression and how it represents the
I
black community?
mean, my responsibility, I don't really look at it as a responsibility. I just look at it as like I'm a creator and I'm making work. And I think the responsibility usually comes down to what kind of human being you are. So, by virtue of the type of human being that I am or will be, it will directly reflect in the work. So, in many ways, that respect for the self, it sort of creates its own particular type of responsibility and discipline or outlook that sort of, but for me, I don't really have, I mean, everyone can do their art their own way. When you say authentic, and who's not authentic, I can get into that debate, but every man makes his own bed his own particular way. So I can't really, I can only say that I can keep doing what I do. And, and that by my doing, I can shed light on things to people that feel like, okay, he's doing a great job at what he says he wants to do, which is reflecting the culture, representing black people, showing beautiful black women, and just being also free spirited with it. So most of it is reflection of my nature, and my just the way I carry myself, um, and sort of like a no limit. I don't put any limits. So, and a lot of times that usually is I'm comfortable with myself. So if you're not so comfortable with yourself, you may do things that are inauthentic. Um, but overall, it's just being me. So it doesn't feel like a responsibility. It just feels like I'm doing things I'm creating work, I'm creating art that will foster good, that will foster a certain amount of aesthetic appreciation for the beauty, for the colors. So I guess that would be the responsibility, is just to make you stimulated and happy and not feel like, oh my gosh, what is that? Like, I don't know, meaning like if I were to make images like showed pain and suffering and stuff like that, because there are people who are loyal to that type of stuff too. So, um, but I don't really hold it as a responsibility. I think within the black cultural space, artists are beholden to sort of quote unquote represent the black culture, and supposed to be like, you're holding up this the fist up in the air. But at the same time, okay, that's one stance you can have, a political stance. But for me, just doing the work and reflecting it back, that's just as effective as putting your fist up in the air, because it's still doing the work, it's still reflecting, it's still putting back positivity and sort of a forward outlook on things. And so, because I don't, I want people to feel good about who we are. Yeah. And when I say
Authentic was
people,
it?
I mean like Black people.